Yes, say, I would, yeah.
Oh, is there anybody waiting or anything?
There's two people that,
Oh, okay. Okay, it is now 7 o'clock and this is the Utility Commission November meeting on November 15th at 7 o'clock. So why don't we call the meeting to order and I'm going to take attendance please.
Aaron Cantu, present. Mike Collins. Freddie Clark. Here. Myself, Jill. Janae.
Here.
Krista.
Here.
Kareem. Rich.
Here.
And Cory, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
Minutes.
First order of business is minutes. It is we have a wrong date here. It's not minutes for October 30th, it's minutes for October 17th, which is our last meeting. And so somebody make a motion. Motion. To approve. Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on or anything to bring up this
No.
seeing none?
I just already got this email from people about the Verizon service, so I figured to add that to the agenda, discuss that and some.
We're
talking about the
We're on
minutes
the
from last. I'm sorry, they must give you anything else.
No, but there's an article about like how Stanford rejected the 5G agreement because of potential. This may cause harm. So,
Oh, it's interesting.
yeah, that might be interesting, right?
Oh, man, good.
So I don't know who you will.
Well, I think the minutes.
Yeah, the agreement on that.
Let's do the minutes.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm just like-
We're in the middle of a motion. I second approval of last month's minutes.
We're all.
Is there any discussion? None.
None.
All those in favor? Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay,
Unanimous.
next agenda point.
Okay, well, the next agenda point is public comments. And the members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the commission on the agenda item scheduled for review and or vote. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Bob, do we have anybody that?
no, but usually you ask the people online to raise their hand electronically.
Okay, can the people online please raise their hand and
If they want to speak.
if they want to speak?
No hands are raised, so
We'll move on.
we'll move
Okay.
on.
So next is the Aquarian Water Company presentation.
Yeah.
And we don't have the Aquarian Water Company here yet, I don't think, but you can.
Okay.
Okay, good.
You go into the parking lot right now.
Okay, well, while he's on his way, why don't we talk about today's point, which is adding one item to the agenda. And then item, can you,
I just would like to discuss the response to the emails that we received to people about the Verizon, the degradation of the Verizon service, about parents from the east side and west side.
okay,
Motion to add.
okay, second,
Second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll add that to the agenda. Okay, we'll make good use of that time.
Can we jump into that or do we wait?
Why don't we just wait?
Okay.
Because we will have a discussion, I'm sure, on this. I thought about this a little bit. I'm sure it's been everybody else.
Schedule, that seems like it's going.
Yeah, we can do schedule.
Okay, why don't we go into schedule? On the schedule, what we sent around was the third Tuesday of the month as we did this year. One of the questions is everyone happy with the way the third Tuesday has worked? And is there any reason to even discuss it or just leave it? Okay, good. The second thing before we actually get to the dates is when we were in this room before, we had discussion and I think we concluded that this room was probably better for us than the town hall meeting room because it's a little bit more intimate and a little bit easier to see the screens and all of that stuff. If that's the case, we'll get them all moved to this room. I think this room is generally much more available to people who like this.
What about the move? What about the move dates?
Yeah, let's.
23.
So now let's talk about the move dates. 2/23 is in the middle of the winter break. And so the choice is to go to So 2:30, I guess, or back to 2/7, what is it, 16?
I go for the 16th. I'll be here. Otherwise, I'm gonna miss February and March. I'll be in New Zealand.
And there's no 2:30 in February, so we're on March 1st.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm okay either way. I have no preference. Anybody else have a preference?
No, I just want to check the school calendar. The February 16th is a Friday. These are
Well-
Fridays that are being quoted.
No, it's January 16th, February 23rd.
February 23rd.
Great. February 23rd is a Friday, which is odd.
That is odd.
And the 16th also is a break. So I would propose that we move the meeting to February 14th. Well, no, this whole week is,
That's Wednesday.
yeah.
If we, if
For you on Thursdays, then you could do the 15th, but,
Oh,
It shows Tuesday.
oh, sorry,
Tuesday.
Tuesday is February 13th. Fine. I
13th.
would propose that we do February 13th, but not Valentine's Day.
Yay.
Okey-doke.
Okay. And for 8/20, to be honest, I mean, even for town council, don't we sometimes just not meet in August and we do the special meeting if needed? Maybe
What's the date and cancel?
I was the one who brought that up. I
That's what
think
we've done.
my experience is, because my son's birthday, that we just have the town is out of town that week, and we're getting ready to go back to school, so my experience is that's just a really dead week. And
On town council, we've always left the date in,
And then,
because it's easier to have a regular meeting and cancel it than have a special meeting,
oh, okay.
okay? The special meetings are restricted,
right.
okay?
well,
So,
then if that's the case, can we just leave? I mean, I feel like all of August is like, I don't say will not be in the state, so.
My experience is that last year, there's no one around in August around here.
Yeah. But if you wanted to
okay,
leave
so
it for now.
8 stays. And, the meeting room is where room, and everybody okay with that?
Anybody have any other comments relative to the schedule?
The advantage of leaving the date in is just because I just think it looks like we can't say meetings to the public if we know nothing about it.
No, we can, it's easier to cancel a regular meeting, right? Than sit there and say, we're not gonna have a meeting, and then if we need one, have a special meeting, because special meetings are restricted.
Okay, we can't put anything else on the agenda. And in the middle of summer, getting the room probably isn't a problem, but having the room is a nice thing. Okay. done.
Great.
Okay, so I think that does it, and we're in. Our guest is here. Good to see everyone. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Sure, my pleasure. Rolling up.
Up on screen.
Let's see. Yeah, Bob, can we get him? Yeah. We get him on screen? Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna see that on the slides, maybe on the screen too. But then you might want to sit there and better business. Yes.
Mr. Logan, would you prefer to sit here?
It's up to you. Where do you?
Then
Please
you can be
make yourself
seen.
most-
Okay. See,
To the
sir.
public.
Well, here you want to be seen. Go to new, not in, oh. Yeah, that's not Zoom here.
Yeah. Very, very fancy hybrid meeting.
Okay. Joke, is that you on Jill's XR?
That is me. 860 is me.
We'll remark you as president.
Great, thanks.
I think look at them like, oh. New info. Now go down. Calendar, okay.
Put in the calendar. Okay. Utilities Commission?
Not the town council.
No, we're not the town council.
They're here.
Click on there.
Thank you, please.
Connect to our Zoom.
No, it worked for us.
I said no.
Those are already, I do have some. Probably helpful. This is usually my plan B.
And your co-host.
When time do I have?
Okay, now-
Well, probably 20 minutes to a half hour. It's not, we're not particularly doing it tonight. We're already not one thing about the calendar. And Tiger, thank you for joining us as well.
And do I,
Do you know how to do that?
you know,
Sharing the screen.
You were already on.
oh, there it is.
I told him I was having been the most of
PowerPoint. Okay, there you go.
All right.
Those technical things.
I tell you, I would rather get it together that quickly.
We've invited, this is a utility commission and there's a lot of different things we're involved in. One of our big utilities here in town is water. So we asked Stuart Rogan from Aquarian to come to talk to us tonight about, what Aquarian has done in town, what their plans are. And Tiger Mann, our director of public works, is here with us. He works a lot with Aquarian on the projects you guys are doing. So, there'll be time at the end, I think, for questions. But George has a deck here, they'd like to go through on some of these things, and I would imagine jump into questions during your presentation, or would you like?
Sure, that'd be fine as well.
Okay. So, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, and absolutely, feel free. And I've been at Aquarian since 1982. George Logan, Director of Community Relations, but I felt different roles. I started off as a junior engineer and then a senior engineer, and I was even a director of engineering for several years at Aquarian. And now I'm more of an executive there. So I had, over the years, had various projects in town, particularly the Little Brook Pump Station, I remember, in the 90s. And I remember when I was a project manager for that, there were folks that were there when it was built, right? And they would say to me, oh yeah, I remember building this pump station. I remember looking at them like, you were here when this pump station was built? And thinking back, I was about 23, they were probably about my age now. Well, and now the same thing's happening. You know, all the work that I did is now being redone by the next generation. So in terms of my presentation, we can talk about a number of things. One, you know, we call this our value of water presentation, where we're trying to let folks in our communities know what Aquarian does. But what we're finding is that there are a lot of folks who are not familiar with what we do as a water utility. Then we're going to chat about our source of supply and game a bit, talk about the water system, take a look at reservoir levels. Folks always want to know what's going on with our reservoir levels. Talk about climate change. It actually affects how we run the water. Talk about water conservation a bit. And then discuss a little bit about system maintenance and repair in a broad sense, some of the programs, activities that we're involved in, and then talk about some of the capital improvements that we have on this year and plan for next year. So Aquarian Water Company, the seventh largest investor-owned water utility in New England. As you can see there, we're based out of Bridgeport. We've been around since the mid 1800s, and as you see on the screen there, P.T. Barnum, he was elected the second president of the company back in 1877. The origins of the water system wasn't so much to provide potable water for folks. They were having a heck of a time with fires. So investors and developers are investing in businesses in Bridgeport that were burning down. They couldn't put out the fires. So the water system was actually put in place to help to fight fires and also bring clean water to the folks. Aquarian Water Company expanded into Massachusetts and New Hampshire back in 2002. We span all of Fairfield County except for Norwalk, right? There are obviously a bunch of folks that are private wells, but in terms of public water supply. We're also in Litchfield County, towns like town of Litchfield and Salisbury and North Kingdon and Sherman and Torrington. We're also in the eastern part of Connecticut as well, Mystic, Stonington, East Hampton, Lebanon, a number of locations. Also of note, Eversource Energy purchased Aquarian Water Company, acquired it in December of 2017. So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Eversource. We're regulated by Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA, and when we go in for rate cases, we go in as Aquarian Water Company separate from Eversource. Aquarian at a glance, just to give some perspective. We have 217,000 connections, customers in Connecticut. Compared to Massachusetts, where we have 9,000, New Hampshire, we have 11,000. So as you can see, the bulk of our system is in Connecticut. Our rate base in Connecticut, $1 billion. That includes all of the pumps, the value of the pump stations, the pipes, the administrative buildings, the water tanks, all of the facilities. And our revenues are $200 million a year. So a lot of folks say, oh my gosh, Aquarian is raking in the dough, right? $200 million a year to maintain a $1 billion rate base. We're in 59 cities and towns in Connecticut. So we've got quite the footprint there.
Are there other water companies, municipal water companies that are in Connecticut besides Aquarian and the Norwalk guys?
Sure, some of the larger ones, Connecticut Water, for example, they're sort of our biggest, if you will, competitors, if you will. But there are obviously other systems, larger regional systems like the Regional Water Authority in the Greater Haven area, NBC in Greater Hartford area, and there are literally hundreds of small community water systems throughout Connecticut. Anything over, I think it's 25 customers is considered a public water system. So there are a number of those.
Any other investor-owned water systems?
I think the other largest is Connecticut Water.
Okay.
They're the biggest. So we're the two big players in town. In the state. Customer satisfaction, very important to Aquarian. We have participated in J.D. Powers. You've heard of those folks. Our latest survey at Aquarian, 95% of our customers are satisfied or extremely satisfied with their service. Most folks go most of their lives with excellent water service and water quality. Don't have much of an issue. But when you do have a water issue, obviously that's when you really realize how important water is and how disruptive that can be. Historically, we've been among the lowest number of complaints for all regulated utilities, electric, gas included. In the right corner there, you see the total PURA complaints, right? Those are our regulators. So if someone calls our offices and they have an issue, we do our best to resolve them. If we can't resolve them or they want to go somewhere else to complain beyond Aquarian, that's our regulators. So back in the early 2000s, we were in the 65, 70 range in terms of complaints that went to PURA. And then PURA had to assist in terms of fixing the problem or solving the problem. We didn't think that was acceptable, so we changed our procedures, put a team of folks together, and within a couple of years, a few years, we were able to knock it down to from mid-60s to around a dozen. And over the last dozen plus years, have been in single digits. So customer satisfaction is extremely important.
How many repair incidents or whatever do you have below that are not complaints?
I'm sorry,
How many complaints do you actually solve within aquarium?
Yes, I would probably put it in probably in the hundreds.
No,
Yes, yeah. Our customer service department is quite busy. What we do is we put, all hands on deck when we do get complaints. There are issues that come up, even in terms of water quality, like for example, discoloration. That's a complaint per se, but we look into those and figure out how to resolve those quickly. And again, we have been able to resolve those, not to say that we instantly resolve them, but we're able to resolve them to the satisfaction of our customers, so they don't go to Pure for resolution. Environment, we consider ourselves stewards of the environment. Every year we have an environmental champion awards, which to us is very important. We also look at in terms of water quality complaints in our legacy systems. Our goal is to have zero violations, zero water quality violations. Doesn't mean that there are complaints. Discoloration in the water is not necessarily a violation. But in 2022, we had zero violations. And that was our goal. Environmental compliance, also extremely important for us. It could be gas spills at one of our facilities, could be chemical, spills. But as you most probably already know, we have secondary containment, usually 110% secondary containment in all facilities. So we have some very significant chemicals, right, that are treatment facilities. Yes.
Have you measured the quality of the water and do you do that? Or?
Absolutely. We conduct literally over 200,000 water quality tests a year, both at our treatment plant, but also the distribution system as well. We have analyzers at our treatment facilities, at our treatment plants. We have backup analyzers to our analyzers as well. We also check throughout the distribution system. For example, chlorine residual levels are important. We try to dose them at the treatment plants, but we need to make sure that we have a certain minimum level at the far ends of the system. So we are constantly conducting water quality tests. We have a whole department to do that. We send out these results. Some tests we can do on site. Most we send out to the labs to get those results.
Who sets the standards that you match?
Sure, our regulators work in conjunction with
So
the Connecticut Department of Health. So the Connecticut Department of Health.
Are there federal regulations as well?
Yes, there are federal and state regulations. Generally, the federal regulations help to drive the state regulations. But the Connecticut Department of Health are the ones that are the watchdog for aquarium here in Connecticut. And they do a fine job. They're very easy to get a hold of. They're good to work with. They're tough, but they're good to work with, and they're very clear in terms of what their expectations are. So our employees also extremely important to us. We have been selected as a top employer, top workplace 6 times here in Connecticut. We cannot provide the quality water and reliable service without having good, professional, knowledgeable employees. And our employees are also very involved in the community. Folks don't know. Over 1/3 of our employees volunteer in over 140 organizations, whether it be the organizations like the YMCA or Chambers of Commerce or Boys and Girls Clubs or Lions Clubs. It's quite a wide range.
How many employees are there?
Approximately 340, right? It changes on that. We're about 340 employees, right? Operating and maintaining a great base of $1 billion of assets. And it's we're lean and mean. Very dedicated folks. So what does the aquarium bring to the table? Roots and headquarters in Connecticut. Customers benefit from great service, industry leading customer service, proven ability to manage rates and work with our regulators. Deep technical bench to solve engineering, operational, and regulatory hurdles. 340 employees, as I mentioned earlier. Our environmental compliance is 100%. Zero health-based water quality violations in 2022. We're on the same track for this year as well. experienced buyer and integrator. Flexible and creative. Again, we help to solve problems. So, we have acquired systems throughout the years, and mostly distress systems. And we will mostly continue to do that as well here in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. So just to chat a little bit about the distribution system, you see the map there. Those pipes are color coded. Red, I don't remember, but red are 6-inch water mains, and green are 8-inch, and the blue are the larger 12-inch and above. And some of the tanks you may be familiar with, the Wavy tank, and the Lloyd tank, and the West School tanks, which we call it the thin tank. In terms of where the water comes from McKinney, just about all the water from McKinney comes from other areas outside of McKinney. The Stanford system actually, during high demands, has the ability to bring water. So those reservoirs are the North Stanford Reservoir, Laurel Reservoir, Barge Reservoir. And we have we call it our Islet pump station, and where we bring water from the Stanford gravity system into the low pressure McKinney system. There's also the interconnection with the greater Bridgeport system. And through that interconnection, through the Southwest Regional Pipeline, water's coming mainly from the Hemlock Reservoir system. And that reservoir system includes the Hemlock Reservoir, Aspentuck Reservoir, the Saugatuck Reservoir, coming as far away as Weston and Easton as well. The Easton system also feeds the pipeline. And a little further out east is the Trap Fall system. That's mainly in Shelton, but all of that is all tied together.
Is it like rerouted or? how does it
Yes,
work?
yeah, a lot of it goes through the actual distribution system. So it's the greater Bridgeport system.
Okay,
So from Weston to Easton, a lot of it goes through Westport. And we go through Westport, and we have it's called the Wilton Road Pump Station. Then there's the Belden Hill Tank in Wilton, and then it goes down the regional pipeline down Route 136 mainly. So it's a shared system for sure. And as I was just mentioning earlier, where the indicates the transfer of water from Stanford in the regional pipeline. I also want to mention the third bullet there, the diversion permit. So in order to move water from these different basins, we have to get approval from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, because we're regulated. And if you remember the drought in 2016, we had some serious issues. And so one of the solutions for that is to regionalize even more and increase the reliability. Many of you will probably remember in 2016 where we had that temporary above line water main. A bunch of it ran down the Merritt Parkway. So in order to avoid that, we are now, to admittedly some disruption to the community, installing a parallel 36 water main down mainly 136. And that obviously is causing some issues during construction in terms of traffic and those sorts of things. But we're working diligently with the town, with Tiger, and trying to do our best to work around school schedules, scheduling more work during the summer months when the kids are schools are out of session. The work hours, doing our best to make sure that we avoid rush hour traffic in the morning and the afternoon as much as possible. And having multiple crews as best we can work to make the work go more quickly.
How long is that project going to take?
Yeah, what's going on in
It's
Harrison?
it's really interesting on Harrison. We lived in there.
Give you a little, yeah, to give you a little, so the Harrison, well, they went to test it, they went to pressure test the pipe itself. And they had a leak, then they had to determine where the leak was, and since Harrison is on a hill, very difficult, right? You gotta fill the whole thing and then try to see where it was, so they dug a series of test pits up and down Harrison to try to find it. Couldn't necessarily find it with normal methods, had to call in a specialized crew to come in and actually almost like a pipe whisperer, right, to kind of look at it and listen. And he found one leak down at the bottom. We think it's a folded gasket, but it's 14 feet down underneath the gas main. So you can imagine the difficulty of one, installing it originally, and then two, trying to repair it. So as they went in to try to repair it, they actually lost a portion of the trench itself, right? They had shoring in place, they had, all the safety measures in place, but they wound up losing a portion of that trench, so then they had to go back out and engineer a new shoring system, have that designed, engineered, constructed, and brought to the site. So that took a little bit of time. But they did it actually, I have to say, it only took them about 2-3 weeks to do that, but it's still extra time involved. They found the leak. We're hoping it's the one, and right now the pipe's being filled. They found the leak on Tuesday, filling the pipe now, hopefully pressure test, exactly. Pressure test, it passes, and that means that whole stretch will be fine.
Will be done.
Right, they still have one last piece to go where they're pipe jacking underneath from the cemetery, underneath the river. And then underneath Main Street, because they didn't want to disturb Main Street. So there'll be what's called a receiving pit on Harrison Avenue and a jacking pit in the cemetery. So they're gonna jack the pipe, push the pipe underground and then come out of the ground and then connect at that point. Almost where the leak is almost where the jacking pit will be. And then at that point in time, they're done with that stretch.
When's that going on? When are they gonna check the pipe through?
They're doing it right now. So they're hoping that they'll be done by the end of the year. So around Christmas time, they should be done. But if you drive into the cemetery now and look to the left, you'll see it. So you can actually see the whole operation, which is kind of cool. It's really cool. I did one of those before. It's very cool. So in any case, right now they're in a shutdown because 106 is a state limit, right? So state determines times of operation. We ask for certain times. And they set their permit accordingly, right? So the state said they had to finish on October 1. We wanted them to go longer, try to get out of here. And once we just started disturbing, we wanted to stay, right? So people understand the traffic pattern, stay. State closed them down, said October 1st, you got to go repave the road just temporarily, and then come back next year. So next year will be from Carter to Valley. We're hoping that we can do the stretch on South Avenue at the exact same time, right? To not lose time and then, be working in two different areas. State has some certain regulations on that as well, because 106 actually comes through town and then comes down South Avenue. It's still 106 at that time. They have a regulation that you can't be on the same road at the same time. We're trying to work through that. Because if not, they would have to do Carter to Valley. That's 24, then 25, 26. And to George's point, they're willing to only work during the summer on South Avenue, right? Because it's so hard with traffic during the school year that they'll work the 8 to 10 weeks between school shutdown and school start, and then come and do it again 2 successive summers, which is actually much more costly for them to try to mobilize, demobilize, wait a year, pipe prices go up. Everything goes up.
So what are the 2 phases on South Avenue you're talking?
It's just basically one stretch from Harrison to Wavy. Yeah,
Fast forward here.
sorry, George.
No, I don't know, it's great, thank you.
Yeah,
And it's in your presentation.
Right. so that last red stretch down the bottom,
Second to last page.
right, that last red stretch on the bottom, it's just one stretch down South Avenue, but it's a little bit longer than what they think they might be able to, if they put 2 crews on it, they think they can do it in one summer. That was the discussion we had the other day.
So this is the 36 inch.
This is the 36-inch main, that's correct.
Yeah.
Right, so, yeah, you can imagine, it'll take up one whole lane of South Avenue, one lane for traffic, one lane of South Avenue. That's why we can only really do it during the summer. And we're hoping that in the 8 weeks, if we put 2 crews on it, they can do it in one summer, 1 crew, 2 summers, and then be done. Paving in between.
As long as nobody folds another gasket doing the revolt, okay, fine.
Yes, exactly. So, and then at that point in time, they were still working in Wilton. And they would finish the portion from Carter to Valley next year. And then the subsequent year, they've got a bridge to cross. So there's a bridge, if you know, right, as you're coming out of Wilton, to get to Valley, there's a bridge right there. There's actually, there's a structure on the outside of that bridge already carrying, pipes. They've got to build basically a new bridge on the outside of that bridge to carry this 36-inch main. That's hopefully the last piece that comes into play. And then the pipe will be continuous from the Belden Hill Station all the way to Waveney. And at that point in time, it hooks up with the existing piping in Waveney, and they're okay.
Are all of these 15 feet down?
Not all of them, no, but they have a lot of, we have a lot of infrastructure, because, in South Avenue, we've got Now we've got gas, sewer, drainage, and level 3, which is our fiber optic, right? So in one location in South Avenue, to give you an idea, it's stacked 3 high. They have to go 14 feet down in order to get underneath it, 14 to 16 feet to get down below, because there's separation requirements,
Right.
which are hard. There's vertical, there's horizontal separation and vertical separation. So not to be too technical, but in the end, what's gonna wind up happening is they're gonna come down South Avenue, they're gonna bang a left and go through what's called the showcase, which is that little area on South Avenue and Farm that has all the daffodils on it. They're gonna hook through there, come up and get onto Farm Road and come up Farm Road because South Avenue is just too busy. So they're actually gonna have to put in a couple extra 100 feet of pipe just to bypass the area because they don't wanna be 14, 16, 18 feet down trying to put the pipe. This is a very, very complex project. They're doing a nice job. It's, it's slow, but it's fast compared to what it could be, I can imagine, right? So, you imagine that, for every foot you dig down, you dig out 2, right? So you kind of go down, and then further you go, you have to kind of scale back out and then slope up. And then putting a 36-inch pipe on the bottom with enough room for men to work around it, you're about 6 feet or more wide at the bottom. That deep, you start to lay back the trenches at that point in time, you're taking up almost the entire road. Wow. So that's the problem.
So George, what's the lifetime for resiliency? What is the lifetime of this 36-inch main?
I would put it around 80 to
80 to 100.
150 years, really. Yeah.
Do we have any of the original 1906 pipes still in the ground in town?
I would imagine, yes.
Yeah.
Especially when I showed you the map that showed a lot of the 6-inch water mains, a lot of the older water main, but they're mainly in residential areas. That's
Right.
right. You mean.
So you can still see a couple of the 1906 manhole covers.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, they're doing a nice job trying to replace everything and then working within our paving structure, right? So our pavement program, we work together on it, so. We either accelerate our paving program, slow it down, they accelerate their pipe program or slow it down, depending upon where we are. So we meet every year and go over a 5-year plan as to where they are and where we're going to be, and we try to sister so that we don't pave a road and then have to do the water main the next year. That would be foolish.
Yeah, well,
So-
luckily we're not on town council anymore, so we don't have to worry about potholes and.
But just to give you an idea, that's, we've been doing that for the past 20 years, working together. They were the first utility actually to come into the town to say, hey, we want to partner with you and what's your paving schedule? So.
All right,
And there's a benefit to both, obviously to Aquarian and to the town in terms of savings, in terms of the volume, the pricing that the town gets. And then we're able to contribute to your paving program in a sense, with our contribution to the paving for those roads, if we find a way we can match. So it behooves all of us to work together. There's just so many parts involved. And again, I must say, like working with Tiger, working in New Canaan, again, I've been here since 1992, going all the way back to my renovation of the Little Brook pump station. New Canaan does have a history of working very well with at least this utility. We definitely appreciate it.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Looking at this map, do all the homes that live along these, where you show the pipe, and do they have Aquarian supplied water, or some of these people still doing wells?
I would say most are on Aquarian water, however, there are some that could have been grandfathered in, but as far as state regulations, if there's a water main on your street and you're building a house or you're renovating, you've got to tie into the water system. But are there one-offs? There probably are, but they're very few and far in between. And then at the end of the day, most folks want to be tied into the town system. For more fire protection, but also because of reliability. And but there are still some private wells out there, and some folks keep their private wells. They use them sometimes for irrigation, as strict irrigation. There's a clear separation between the two sources.
Do you have any idea what percentage of residents in New Canaan are on Aquarian water?
It's about 30%. It's
Oh,
about 30% land mass. They sister pretty close to our sewer system. So, our sanitary sewer system, and that's about 1/3 of the town. So it's predominantly around your our downtown area and the smaller zoned acreage. They do branch out. They're a little bit larger than our sewer system, so I would say it's maybe probably greater than that, greater than 30%, maybe 40%. Just based upon overlaying their map on top of our sewer map, they're in a much greater service area.
And so sometimes you get questions like, well, why don't you expand to all of, New Canaan? Well, our issue there, well, costs are obviously, but then you pick up your customers, but the issue is we cannot, use the, resources, right? And the rates that folks are using to expand the water system to pick up new customers. So the only way the system expands is if, whether it's a town project, the town's gonna pay for, or if a developer is gonna pay to extend the water main to their development, or if there's a pump station involved. And then, over, time folks can tie into the system. There's a whole refund process and that sort of thing as well. So,
It'll make it easy. Okay.
No,
Sorry for the diversion.
no worries, no worries.
I'll bet that, I mean, if it's a third of the land mass, I'll bet it's over half of the population is served by aquarium.
Close, yeah, it's tough that, I don't have that number per se. I know how many households we have, so on the sewer system, it's around 3,000. So
Yeah, I didn't bring
gives
this
an
number back.
idea, gives you an idea out of the 9,000, that's what I'm trying to say, it's about a third.
About a third.
Yeah,
actually,
but
sure.
because they're, like I said, our maps kind of coincide, and for the right reasons, right? Higher density, you obviously want to have that,
How close do you have to be to the water main to be tied into it, have you said?
Well, if the water main runs along your road, it doesn't matter if it's 25 feet or 200 feet into your property. It's a matter of the frontage. The property, you have to have frontage on the road there to comply and tie in. You'll find in some areas, some of these older neighborhoods, there are, which you would consider non-compliant service lines that go through neighbors' properties and those sorts of things. So those are no longer included. You have to have the frontage to tie in, unless you get special compensation from the state. Maybe something different. All right, so I'm gonna go backwards in my presentation now.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, no, that's great. I wish I could bring you around with me when I'm going to trip down. I'm a very knowledgeable fellow. Capital improvements in New Canaan, Talmadge Hill pump station. That pump station actually helps to push water down the regional pipeline, but it is physically in New Canaan. And that's in construction now. We're looking to start up by the end of the calendar year. And then with the old pump station, start the facility, punch list items, demolition, landscaping, other restoration, hopefully by the summer of next year, that's the plan. And then there are a number of pipeline projects. This year, we were on Weed Street, Orchard Drive, and entire grabbing the tables, information internally, let me know if I'm off anything. Lakeview Ave, Greenlee Road, Harrison, I was chatting about Brutus. Burtis, but they're on Burtis. Next year, we're gonna be on River Street, and the extents are there between Charles Place and Brushy Ridge Road, Hill Street as well. And you can see the length of those jobs, some of them quite significant, particularly Harrison, almost 2,000 feet. So we have a significant amount of work going on.
Are these all placement of lines?
Yes, there's one abandonment there as well, the Burtis. Oh, I think that was my typo there.
That's okay.
Yeah, Burtis, that's an abandonment.
What does that mean? Yeah, I mean,
We're abandoning an old water main. Yeah, so
you put a new one in, or?
yeah, probably in the past in a different spot, and now we're gonna abandon them. I got that. Sometimes we abandon water mains in place, right? It's legal in place, but in certain conditions, I'm not sure what the situation there. We must have made some sort of promise to physically take it out, probably for the other utilities in the year. They need the space, so we're pulling that one. And then we talked about the subdivision pipeline.
Are you putting pipes in for any reason except replacement or expansion for new buildings?
That's about that. There's an existing water main and for developer projects or town. And the regional pipeline falls in a bit of a different category. That's more of a regional planning type of project.
Is it ever done?
What's that?
Is it ever done? You've given us through next year. You have plans for 25.
Sure, as far as main investments? No, it's never done. No, we will continue. And then we set up criteria in terms of age of water main, number of breaks, those sorts of things to help determine. We obviously have limited funds to do so. But again, for towns where we can work with the town in terms of their paving program, it can reduce drastically the cost per foot of a water main. So cost is also one of those factors as well. So we're able to work with the town and reduce the cost per feet and get more length replaced, it ratchets it up, in terms of priority list as well. And I think you're seeing some of the benefits of that in terms of the water mains that we're replacing. But as you can see, there's so many water mains just in the town of Canaan alone. And we have something, I think, just over 3,000 miles of water main. So I am going to just quickly just go over to some programs that we have. Our website, aquariumwater.com, there's a lot of information on there, including project updates are on aquariumwater.com. I talk about our Environmental Champions Awards. You can nominate folks. We'll be doing that again in the spring, and we usually have the event in June. So this is for nonprofits, companies, nonprofit companies, large businesses, small businesses, and individuals who are doing good for the environment. And the grants are significant. For non-profit organizations, $5,000. For the individual winner is $5,000. Now, the winner doesn't get the $5,000. They get to choose a nonprofit that will that can have the grant. And even under our student category, here the student gets it directly. That's $1,000 as well. We have a rain barrel program. Very popular rain barrel program.
How's that going? I've got one of your rangers.
Yeah. So just remember, we're going to be back at it in most likely late March, early April, and the quantity is limited. So go on the aquariumwater.com starting in March every day, and we make sure you get your order in, because once we hit our limit, we cut it off, and new orders will go through usually early May. And then we have Earth Day projects that we do throughout the community as well. I'm actually going backwards. I've never done it before, but I'm going backwards in my presentation. I'll skip this. System maintenance and repair, just some general water system flushing. We're in a roughly 5-year cycle. We try to make sure that we flush every water main in our system on a 5-year cycle, unless of course there's a acute issue and we have some discoloration. We'll do that right away. Hydrant maintenance is on 3-year cycles. And water storage tank rehabilitation. A tank painting goes about 15 to 25 years. Pump station improvements, 15 to 25 years. I've been at the waterworks for about 30 years. That's the pump station was renovated during my stay here. And water treatment plant improvements are always ongoing. Just want to chat about our, although it's a Fairfield, twice weekly watering Fairfield County. Yes. Yeah.
In terms of the way you treat the water, do you have a big improvement in terms of technology or?
Yes, we have, especially in the 90s. Conventional treatment uses filtration, right? We use chemicals to help to coagulate the larger particles and then go through different sand media to filter the water. We also have now in the 90s installed what's called dissolved air flotation as well, where as opposed to having heavy particles settle and then scraping them off the bottom, dissolved air flotation actually makes the particles rise into a sort of foam and we scoop them off the top. So we have both technologies depending on the facility. Our well fields also are treated, with chlorine or granulated activated carbon as well. So there's a variety of techniques that we use. There isn't one specific.
What we're talking about treatment. How are we doing on zinc? We're constantly battling, our effluent quality based on the amount of zinc that we're putting in the water because the amount of zinc that you put in the water.
Sure. So I would say this, we have our water quality department. We have an excellent director in water quality. I would just ask Yeshua Larson, has the town been working with him or chatting with him at all on that?
I believe that Tiger's guys down at
Yeah, that's right.
ice treatment plant have been talking to you. Because, zinc is one of our biggest problems that we have, since the water treatment plant is the largest inflow to the 5 Mile River for a significant portion of the year. Our input or our output is based on your input, basically.
Yeah, without a doubt. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a bit of a trade-off, and there are regulations that we need to meet as well. And I know that our folks are working hard to keep the levels as minimal as possible. I haven't spoken to our director of water quality recently on the zinc issue. But if if you're
No, I think zinc is, zinc is supposed to be good for us to be taking anyway, but.
yeah. No, I agree. And that's why I say we're regulated. There's certain parameters you have to stay within, right?
But the EPA doesn't think that we should be putting it in the 5 Mile River and ending up in the sound.
So you have to choose.
So, the horseshoe crabs are not getting colds or something.
Well, all I can say that we will continue to work with
Yeah.
the town the best we can to try to manage that, whether it's time of the year, whether there's flexibilities in the type of doses that we need. But my understanding is that we've been working with
Yeah.
your folks.
You just want, a lot of people probably don't know, why do we put zinc in the water? Why do you put zinc in the water?
Right, well, a lot of it has to do with water quality issues and also in terms of protection for the water users, as well, which is very helpful.
It's a corrosion protection.
Yes,
Issue.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as putting zincs and, and when you stick in water, sacrificial.
which is huge, really important to get that 80 to 180 years out of the water.
Okay,
Super. Well, I am going to leave it at that, unless you have any questions. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the twice per week watering that we have instituted for water conservation measures, and that will continue for the foreseeable future as well. And it's been a pleasure to be here. If you ever want me to come back and talk specifically at any particular issue, even zinc, would be more than happy to do that. And thank you for your time, and for those of you that are online as well. It's been a pleasure.
One quick question, what
Yes.
is the Lloyd tank? You mentioned on here the 3 tanks in Japan, and it talks about the Lloyd tank. Where is that?
Yeah, that was one there next to the Waveney.
Lapham Lloyd property,
Right.
that's why they call it Lloyd.
Yeah, so you may have a different name for it. That's what we call it.
It's the one over there next to the platform. What do you mean?
Christopher Lloyd grew up there.
Yeah.
And
So I actually have a few questions. that-
Sure.
To be honest, maybe they're more specific and they actually really don't fall directly into you, but if you have any insight.
Sure.
And I'm happy to do our own research on this. Do you happen to know, so every regulated utility has their own, in every state, it's very, very different. And I just don't know the answer to this. What is the legal authorization, because either by state law or by a franchise agreement, that you serve New Canaan? What's the guiding authorization? Sometimes it's just a broad state law and there's territories granted, or the regulated utility will have a very specific franchise agreement.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know that answer? I mean, it's something which I'm sure the city knows, I just don't know.
No, absolutely. In terms of exclusive service areas.
Yeah.
The water utility and electric utility, the monopolies, our regulators have kind of, carved out, which utilities are responsible for specific towns and areas. So it is through state.
It's a state, it's sort of a state.
Absolutely,
state
not a
statute.
federal state.
Yeah, no, I get just wondering, it's the state statute
Yeah.
broaden a general area,
Yes.
okay, so that's.
So
and then-
exclusive service areas is the term that's used.
Yeah, no,
That term.
I hear that. The second question is, and this actually, you're obviously taking very good care of the water supply
Yeah.
for your customers and the customers that you're responsible for.
Yes.
One of the questions that just comes up to mind, I don't know the answer to this, but hopefully we'll figure this out, is that can you speak to anything, even informally, about, since a portion of the New Canaan residents do not benefit from your plant. They're on their own.
Yes.
What their situation is.
Sure.
It's like, okay, for those that aren't, like, no, they're fine, there's absolutely no problem. Or like, no, there could be. And again, that's not your responsibility, but you must have some familiarity with the quality, the amount, and for those that aren't managed by your system, that has a regional wide supply.
Yeah, I would say your local health department are the only ones that are kind of keeping track of those private wells. And in terms of water quality, required testing doesn't exist. I think the compensated doesn't exist in New Canaan, doesn't exist in most communities. And it's up to the homeowners to actually test the quality of their water. And the quantity issue, just rears its ugly head when there's when there's a drought.
Sure.
Sort of, but yeah, it's
Sometimes those quality issues, I think, on a house that's served by a well come up when the house trades, right? Wouldn't a new buyer have?
Well, I was
Yeah, no,
comment that when you purchase a house, if you're smart, you do comprehensive water testing. I think there's even 3 levels of tests that are offered. And I guess my question would be, are there guidelines on how often you should be testing the water system after that initial house purchase? Every year, every two, or?
I'm sure the EPA has guidelines for that, but not in terms of actionable items.
Yes.
That's at all. Just in terms of that, if you own a private well, this is how you should, the best management practices, if you will, for that. But there are no action items, levels, as far as I'm aware of, in terms of what's required, either at the town level, state level, or a federal level for private wells.
And then just, again, my last question, and I apologize for the. Like,
No,
this,
it's
it goes to, I'm sort of imagining a situation, again, which may not ever come up here, is that a certain area of the town that's on their own suddenly has a major issue. And you talk about sort of like the mechanisms, the way the rates are certainly set, that it's not necessarily, you're not incentivized or really have the capacity to go out there, but to the extent that there's a whole block suddenly have a problem with quality supply or take your pick of things and like didn't have an option,
Yes,
what happens?
sure.
What happens? Obviously, the base infrastructure of your company is there. The rates aren't really set up for it, but there's a clear need that the city, like somebody has to want to do something. How can that get resolved? Is there some mechanism by which that can occur, or
Sure.
the city has to sort of figure it out?
Well, unless, of course, the city wants to help out monetarily for that community, it's up to the residents that are having that issue. But we do work with them in terms of our expertise, in terms of laying out, okay, this is what we would need in terms of water main, or in terms of if there's pumping involved. And I've been at the work long enough, but we've had those types of situations. In some instances, towns do get involved, and others is up to the residents, and we try to just make sure that it's economically reasonable as possible in terms of cost, in terms of, and also you run the problem, there are many times where there have been issues in communities where not everyone will jump on the new line. It's another problem as well, but we have a mechanism for that as well, is a refund process, so that if they decide to go in years later, they'll have to refund those who paid into it. However, there is a light to that as well, and sometimes folks play that as well. So it's like, I think it's 10 years. After 10 years, there's no refund.
Do you know if a situation like, not to put you on the spot, do you know of a situation like that has happened in New Canaan where either a development or a student, where that process occurred? Because again, I just sort of think about one day that happens, and it's like, all right, well, this was done over there, let's follow that mechanism. And the city does this, or it costs approximately this, or do you know of an example?
Not in New Canaan, just again, based on my experience at the water company since 1992, but they're having other areas, and they're generally centered around contamination, where the wells are just not potable anymore, that sort of. But I personally don't recall that occurring in 30 years in New Canaan.
Okay, I mean, these are just areas that we're starting to think about.
So effectively, the neighbors that had the problem have to get together and set their own water company up if they wanted to.
No, I'm not saying that. No, if they wanted to extend the water main to their community, to the neighborhood, no, they would actually work with the water company. They wouldn't have to set up a water company per se, but they would have to pay to extend the water main and the service lines into their homes. But we would help out. Let's lay out the design.
And that becomes an issue whether
But it would be-
whether the city feels it's important enough,
That's right.
whether it's so insurmountable, the city needs to just. like,
Right, or it's
responsibility.
up to the homeowners.
Yeah, or like, no, you're on your own, and I think that, I'm sure there's various criteria by which the city needs, wants to, or should.
And there's so many various
Yeah.
ways of working together. For example, to put a water main in the ground, you have to tear open the road. It's where the repaving of it would help out, help reduce the cost of that water main.
I mean, I think this is probably all laid out somewhere, people are doing their own spreadsheets. This is like, this area, in terms of if something comes up, we should all know, or have an idea like how that would work.
And I found that the community and the state comes together to try to come up with a reasonable solution to those types of problems.
That's cool.
One
Yes.
quick question, how does it work, the driver for the cost of the water? Or, what I.
Sure.
Forgive
What
me.
determines the
Yeah.
cost of rates? Yeah, so it's purely in the hands of our regulators, pure.
Oh,
So we conduct what's called cost of service studies, look at what is the cost to the water company to provide water in terms of to all our customers, in terms of maintenance of capital, replacement cost, treatment costs, power costs, the employees, the buildings, the insurance, everything. And then we provide that information to our regulators, and they determine what they believe is a reasonable rate of return for them.
Let's see if I asked this question right. When was your last rate case?
Sure.
What do you have planned coming forward as far as how it impacts people's rates here?
Sure. So our last rate case was decision came in March of this year. And we were looking for in total over a number of years, about a $26 million increase. And our regulators gave us a $2 million decrease. And so that didn't go over very well. So
Related to that, because I read this and I was familiar on the electric side,
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it still applies to the same water, to the water side, it's all regulated. Is that, am I right that Connecticut regulation started sort of a new process of, I forget the form,
Yeah.
how have you found that? Because it's pretty new,
yes.
and I guess is it fundamentally different? Is it still being worked out in terms of your ideas of like what measures they're using and how they're?
Sure, I would say on the electric side is more developed than it is on the water side. And we're fine with performance based rate making, as long as it's clear, we know what the rules of engagement are, and I think that those are still being.
That's, I mean, metrics.
Yeah, metrics, right.
Right, whatever.
Well, we as a utility don't have an issue on based rate making. We think that's a smart way to go. Again, the devil's in the details of clarity in terms of what the expectations were.
I'd like to make a comment about this because, was it 5 years ago that, Quarry was acquired by Eversource?
I mentioned that December of 2017, 5 years.
5 years ago, like $2.4 billion.
I don't remember the exact number.
They bought it from Quarry, the Australian, it was held in a private equity fund, in this Australian private equity fund. And they didn't do a lot of investment in the system. I mean, that's part of the strategy of private equity firms, right? You're right. To either milk the company, so you can sell it. But we've seen the investment, a number of towns around us wanted to fight the rate increase. And I said, I see the investment. I see the pump station you've done over on Latham Road. I've seen the big 36-inch pipe they're putting up to move the water over to Greenwich. Greenwich sells some of their water to Westchester towns like Scarsdale and stuff. So kind of crazy the way water flows.
Yeah.
But but we've seen the investment. I mean, someone's got to pay those investment dollars. And when you have 100-year-old pipes and it's expensive to replace them, someone's got to pay for that investment. So it was really kind of surprising to see Europe so, in my view, almost irrational, saying, don't you see the investments it's coming to make after not having been well maintained under the quarries? Yeah, that's my perspective.
As a follow-up question to that, did you see any impact to the query as a result of being purchased by Eversource?
I would say if you look at our capital spending, it has ratcheted up significantly since being acquired by Eversource. When I was director of engineering, I left back in acquisition back in 2014. Our capital budget was about $60 million, and now we're looking at over $150 million. And not even 2 years. So yeah, I'd say the investment has ratcheted up significantly since being acquired by Eversource.
From a management standpoint, are you kind of operating the same way you were before? That your company and you manage it, and Eversource is not particularly involved.
For antitrust reasons, it's amazing. The gas company can virtually not even talk to the electric company.
Is that right?
They can't share customer. That's kind of an amazing regulatory structure because they have a trust laws. They're allowed to own the gas company throughout the electric company.
Is that similar for acquiring?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of you're regulated by Pura. When we go in for rating, we go in as a brand water company. That I don't consider it Eversource, not as Eversource. Energy. I would say this: if you take a look at the upper management, be it the current president and most of our vice presidents, they're all the same ones that were there prior. Vice president of engineering, vice president of supply operations, our vice president of administrations, our current president was CFO, and now he's the president of the company. So we have maintained control from that standpoint. But that's not to say that Eversource is hands-on off per se.
You mean they just show up and look at the bank account every once in a while?
No. They certainly play an active role in terms of assisting where they can, whether it's legal matters, whether it's some customer service matters. And everything's scaled up, right? You look at Aquarian, we have 340 employees, Eversource is like north of 8,000. So it's totally different the scale. So there are synergies from that standpoint that we both take fully advantage of. And communications is a lot better as well, operating as a subsidiary of Eversource, where there's overlap in terms of utility price that we have in areas. So there are lots of benefits with being acquired by Eversource.
So disappointment on your part in that March rate case of this year.
Yes, and we have appealed it, so that's in progress now. So we'll see where that goes. And we haven't adjusted our capital plans in any way because of that decision in March. Whether it's capital improvements or our community outreach, we maintain the levels thus far. Well, because we believe that we run a very effective and efficient program, whether it's our capital program, whether it's our maintenance program, whether it's our involvement in our community. And we think it's important that we do everything that we can to maintain the level of investment and the level of involvement in our communities. Thank you. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a long 20 minutes.
I love it. Yeah, it's great though. It's good.
I make a little comment, it's a transition,
Sure.
so, our biggest facility in town is on the top of the Wavy Water Tank. In 2016, Aquarian told the town, that they wanted us to take off the antennas because it was their policy no longer to host some antennas on water tanks. And, so all of 2017 was taken designing a new cell tower. It was gonna have to be taller than the 130-foot tank so that it could, function. And in January, when I took office, the Chuck Riddle, Chuck came to see me and with Don and said, we heard you. We're gonna keep the antennas on the water tank. And then they said, a year later, they said, we gotta pay the water tank. And we had a share in the cost of the but they also had the junior water tank was sitting there rusting. And I said, are you gonna take down the other tank? And they said, why? And I said, well, do you use it? And they said, no. I remember what's the real estate lady, she said, you want us to take it down?
Liz Kimberly Schultz.
Yeah, I said, of course. So they cut down the other tank because it was sitting there. The reason you have a water tank is to maintain the water pressure for the fire hydrants, right? It's to maintain it. That's the only reason you have water tanks. Not so much for storage, to maintain the pressure, to be able to maintain your water pressure. So.
It's all good reclaimable pre-war steel. I will
Yeah.
tell you what impressed me about that water tank is the color. The color is always right. No matter what the sky is. I don't know how you guys do that.
They didn't ask me that. I'm terrible at picking colors. I can't even begin to tell you my first pump station job, and I picked the interior colors, but seemed to go, look right on those samples. But boy, when they actually painted it, it was like, oh, I don't pick colors at home, and I don't pick colors for my facilities.
The only one thing they didn't allow us to do, we wanted to put up a big home of the Rams.
Yeah.
I said, no, they don't allow that.
Good ask. My first job as an engineer was for Ford Motor Company, and my first project was to climb the water tower at the plant. It was a 17-acre plant. Climb the water tower and figure out how much paint they needed. Somebody must have known how to do that. I'm joking. Why they set me up this ladder?
Yeah, and they paint the tower inside and out, because they got it, across the whole.
Thanks again, George.
Thanks.
We can see what about engineering. Keep the water flowing. That's what many cities show. Okay, next on the agenda is kind of the cell phone stuff. Right, with Krista and Sven to give us an update on how what's happening.
Well, I'll just do quickly my phone call. with the state of Vermont. Rich joined me in that. As you remember, in October, it was looking to present to us all about their offerings. And one of the differentiating items that Ookla can provide is that they mimic the user experience more than perhaps some other drive-by tests that are offered that would just do basically passive screening and catching signals. So with a number of handhelds set, some for voice, some for data, they can capture the actual user experience. Can you make a call? Can you sustain a call? Vermont chose to rent their own equipment and conduct the test themselves, although you can hire professional services to do that. But in a nutshell, the state of Vermont was very pleased with their experience with Ookla. They basically tested their federally funded roads. That was the priority for them. They did use a little bit of crowdsourcing, but more to kind of include the townspeople, not necessarily for data points. They used 6 phones with 6 different carriers. They did think sometimes the phones would overheat, so they ran into a little bit of logistics with that. But something else that was interesting was, we were asking them how Vermont handles cell towers and whatnot versus what we have with the Connecticut Siting Council. And something that stood out as being very different is that in their town ordinance, they are able to write in restrictions, if you will. They have, in Manchester, Vermont, for example, they have ordinances that say you can't have a cell tower within 200 feet from a house, and it's written into the local ordinances. So that kind of helps them manage, their process. In this started, they said in the 1990s, they had a regional planning committee that established all of this. When a tower is being proposed, there's a 60 to 90 day notice period, and people can come out and discuss it. But that they do rely heavily on their town ordinances. So that was, interesting. And then as a result of their study with Ookla, basically the FCC, there are 3 counties on the western part of their state that are now going to have to prove their coverage with the FCC. And I think we touched upon that in one of the last meetings, that they found pockets of coverage, but the carriers denied it. So now the carriers are going to have to go for the FCC to validate, what's up. So that was a useful.
Was that just like complaints or?
No, as a result of doing
No,
this.
as a result of doing this, they actually found a discrepancy.
Correct.
And that raised to a level of like, okay,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, so that was like a very tangible thing that they could speak to. And I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. So, it's making me feel better, about Ookla, even better than before when they came to present. And I think that, as a commission, we should consider recommending it.
They were very positive. I would very much agree with what Krista said. They were very positive about it. It's an ongoing program. They're not done with it. And they own the phones now, and they're just continuing to collect data. And the primary thing they use it for is the places that are rural and are probably not well covered. And they help the residents figure out what the coverage is so they can go to the FCC or go back to the carrier and say, this is the real issue in this specific place. You guys are saying it's covered. Here's the data. Here's fix. And they were very impressed with the Ookla folks, and they didn't find it difficult to do what they were doing. I mean, the guys in the traffic department were driving cars, with the cell phones.
So they own the equipment now.
They own the equipment, but the only equipment they bought, I believe, was 6 cell phones. Right. And imagine this: it looks like 6 cell phones, I believe, screwed to a piece of plywood in the front of their car. And that's hooked into another piece of equipment that they got from people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That goes with the Win software.
Well, it was striking, you want to mimic the user experience, right? Like just grabbing signals and saying, you know, I'm making up numbers, this is 100, this is 200, but in reality, you know, there are the dips and the leaves and everything else that's interfering, so you want to make sure that you hang on to a call and can sustain it, so they felt that Ookla's system was set up for that.
When we talked to them about a drive-by study, like we're talking about where you're measuring power levels, they were somewhat dismissive of that from their standpoint. That was not nearly as useful as what they were getting. To them, it would not have been useful, for what they put it to use, for what they used.
Right.
Another interesting thing is, apparently in Vermont, maybe it's the case here, when a tower wants to go in, and people come in and complain, they can't complain based on health. It's not expected by, it's not accepted. And so, you know, we asked them issues about, you know, it's health a problem, et cetera, said, absolutely not. That's just not something anybody can use. So it was useful. They're told to have this call again, go back out, see what they're doing. They thought it was well worth it. They have probably, you know, it's a state, they probably spent several $100,000 on their equipment study an hour, et cetera.
Right.
Well, it's a big place.
It's geographic.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, you know, they probably got 2,000 miles to go there.
Right,
You know,
so we wanted to share those findings with the commission. So I hand it over to Corinne, the son.
Well, we have scheduled on until tomorrow, right?
That's fine.
Yeah. And so we're still.
Great.
Who's it with tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or with your comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
And yeah,
Can I make a comment?
Please.
There's a reason Vermont has terrible cell service,
That's silly.
the density. And the
Right.
carriers have no interest in serving rural areas,
I'm sure.
they can't make money,
Mhm.
that can invest. And local zoning is good, you know, they say, if you're gonna make it difficult, and expensive for us, we're not gonna invest. If you're an investor, you know,
Mhm.
people don't invest their dollars where it's difficult to do business and where the density of the population doesn't justify the investment. You know, they're struggling, the only reason they're checking their federal roads is federal government shoveling out money as grants to improve cell service in certain like the rural areas. If carriers won't do it with their own money,
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
yeah, I just wanted to mention like. We should maybe talk to Stanford, because there's an article that say that they rejected the 5G agreement because of health concern. So, we folks,
That would be great.
Can you circulate that article?
Have you read the article? You know, who in Stanford rejected it?
You know, again, they're legislative body.
Their legislative body. There's. Okay, so there still may be miles for them to go, right?
You need to know those whole backstory with Stanford.
Okay.
so they don't go, yeah, they go a little bit on the detail, but. It's still interesting to us, right?
Mhm. You bet.
And then the other thing that I had shared with the commission was, you know, we've received a number of complaints from citizens regarding poor self-service in certain areas. Down one area is, I would call the southwest corner by Adams Lane, Springwater Lane, and then now on the east side by Canoe Hill Road and over there. And it seems to be getting worse, so I just think that we should be aware. I don't think that, I mean, that we want the commission to become a customer service hub, but to that point, I know that the Verizon antenna was taken off of the pole, let's say, at the country club.
No,
So
it was never on.
Verizon was
Verizon
never.
never on. Country Club restricted the two carriers, AT&T and T-Mobile.
Oh,
It
okay,
was a T-Mobile tower, AT&T is on there. Now, on the other hand, on the back nine at the country club, for the first time in my life, I'm getting signals from Keith Ritchie cell tower. Right, and never, I was at club today for lunch, no Verizon cell service at all.
right.
So,
Well, there's a committee there, I don't know if it's the finance or whatnot, that was researching potentially putting a Verizon antenna on that
I've been
tower.
working on it for 5 years.
And they were in negotiations, so I just have reached out to them in terms of getting it. Good contact over at Verizon, that we could engage with from a town level, not a customer service rep level. To just, come in, talk to us, what's up?
I think that would be very useful if we could get somebody directed from Verizon.
Yeah.
And I think the citizens coming to us is fine as well, as long as they don't expect us to be doing that.
Absolutely, I want to hear from them,
But
absolutely.
it's great input for us.
But I do think it's notable, the drop in service from summer months to now, like places that had good service, something has changed in the last 3 to 6 months. Because leaves are off the trees, they're not been a large
It should-
influx of citizens, houses haven't been sold, there's not a lot of change in residency. And so I understood from calling myself, Verizon, they say there's infrastructure changes going on. So I would like to understand what those infrastructure changes are. And then other person I know called, and they said, oh, it's because the 5G is coming in. So we told different stories, but they're kind of acknowledging there is there is a problem. And so I guess I understand the town's frustration, because although we're not customer service, why has the cell service suddenly
And
degraded?
I think that is our job, on a whole basis, not on an individual basis, on a whole basis.
What explain why?
This is where like the approach would help, we just jump in the car and just, okay, and check if something has changed, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Gotta get to the baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, we don't have before the data to show, like, I wish we had the data from 8 months ago to be compared to now, but we don't have that. Unfortunately, it's like, what is?
Right, and I don't understand the correlation between if their priority is 5G, why it would be a.
No, that's the,
Yeah.
Right, so that seems silly.
it's
So
not
we
rational,
need,
it's not, yeah.
we need someone to come in and give us an accounting of what's going on today. And it will help inform coverage maps, but
Well, Ken Baldwin, the attorney for Verizon in Hartford, has been working on the PA for 25 years. And he presented the PNC last October.
he came to us too, I
Yeah,
think.
you can't-
Where to call it.
So he's the person you want to talk to. You can get anybody from Verizon to show up.
Okay.
I'll call
This is totally anecdotal, but I have close friends who worked for Verizon. Like in installation and in customer service for 20 years. Who I was visiting this past weekend, and he did say the same thing, that their focus is putting on 5G. Putting up 5G towers.
Well,
It
they're
seems
all,
to be their answer.
they're only installing 5G on new equipment. And it's really a software change for other, they don't put in new antennas, it's a software change. But they have so much demand across the country. They're focusing on the cities.
Sure.
5 years
Yeah.
ago, you said we wouldn't see 5G for 10 years. Now that accelerated because of the purchase of all that lower band. So that really accelerated the process.
What he said though is that there's actual, and this is what I was curious, I'd be very interested in hearing from Verizon, because what he said is that they're putting up actual additional towers on top of existing poles. Telephone poles and such, though, not cell towers for the 5G.
That's interesting.
The strategy changed because when they first started talking about 5G implementation, they were going to have 10,000 small cells in Dallas, Texas. That purchase of shorter band for billions of dollars. They spent $92 billion to buy that shorter band. Changed the strategy. So now they go back to basically 4G macro sites and expand them to 5G, and the signals don't go as far as the 4G did.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I thought it was the reverse. The 5G would go farther.
Yeah.
So Janae, you'll read that, and hopefully we can get someone from Verizon here in our next meeting, right?
You look for tomorrow.
Great.
Okay,
And the next meeting is?
December,
It's December 11th.
yes, December 11th. Okay.
Right, that's all we
That's
have
the
on
Monday.
December 11th.
11th is a Monday.
Yeah, 11th is a Monday. I don't remember why it's on that
I
date.
think it was because of rooms. We used to be care about rooms.
Yeah, yeah.
Now we don't.
Confusion on color of Monday.
Okay, so I think that's all for point number 5.
Okay,
We've discussed number 6, and just if there's any other commissioner reports.
yeah, anybody, any of the commissioners got anything they want to bring up in their area? No, we've seen the aquarium, you can all be comfortable and whatever drinking.
Just maybe just a question, because this just spurred on thoughts that I want to have some maybe follow-up questions. What do you think would be the best way to, I mean, I can just come up with questions and send it to George and have him answer or not answer. Happy to present a list of questions for the commission, say, does anybody else have any thoughts on what I'm asking? It's just more follow-up stuff, and whether he knows it or not, or he can direct us, just gonna make it useful as a reservoir for a repository of information. But I'm happy to do it on my own or work with anybody to do that or whatever, but this just sort of spurred on some questions.
Oh,
Yeah,
he offered to come back if we had any.
Yeah. I think it's just more like, there was actually some slides in here, I actually want to just talk a little, understand a little more.
So why
just
don't
follow.
we send our questions to you and you can be the
Yeah.
liaison with,
Because otherwise we end up holding a meeting
yeah,
on email and that's illegal.
one-way question. Okay, great.
I would be curious when you get the statistic of how many households are on Aquarian water versus town water, but about 30%, I think that would be interesting. To look like a utility commissioner, we should know how many people are on Aquarian water versus on private wells. How we find that out, but I think Aquarian.
3,000 or 7,000 households. Businesses, because we know from our sewer fee. You know, who has rainwater,
3,000 or 7,000.
3,000 and 7,000, obviously, the density of downtown in South Avenue is more. The footprint of rainwater is essentially the same as our sewer district.
Because I bet Tiger said the sewer was a bigger footprint than the
Some of
water.
that's what's.
40%. That was the sewer person.
And he didn't make it sound like that was gonna change.
No.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that's gonna change it, right? I mean, with the way it's set up.
Again, it's the expense of rural living, right? People don't invest their dollars, but it's very expensive to serve so few people. Because well and septic works perfectly well as long as we don't pollute our.
Right.
So,
But at some point, there may be the problem where we are polluting, right?
Or you have Connor, Texas, so where the private wells are going dry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Overdeveloped.
That's a different problem. You know, historically, you know, we haven't had a lot of industry that uses a lot of chemicals. The only chemical problems we've had in the past go back to rat poison and water flowing downhill into a meat park. You can guess who used it for rat poison.
And is there like just like a question, like, is there a map of the aquifer or?
It's under the whole town, it's a question of how far down you go. You know, the aquifer is really, virtually the whole town.
And it's not
Right now.
It's not particularly deep. I mean, it's not hard to draw.
My well on Paris Hill is 300 feet deep.
With a,
It's really well.
Right now, our biggest problem with polluting the aquifer has to do with pesticides.
I see.
So you're a nice green one. You still have that running town over it.
okay,
Ben,
can we
stop.
get a motion to adjourn?
Yeah,
Motion.
Ben makes the motion, I second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. For your
Kevin, thank you for coming to our meeting.